All right, I think we are good, and I've tried to block out the light that usually is like reflecting right off my face, so hopefully you can see me a little more clearly than in the past. Hello, everybody. About to do some artwork, and I'm just gonna. I've got a bad headache, so. Just taking some leaves. With caffeine in case I have some sort of weird caffeine withdrawal headache. I don't know. So anyway, this past weekend was the Emerald City Comicon. Really wonderful convention here in Seattle. I went for Saturday and Sunday. And on Sunday, I hung out with a really good friend of mine, Randy Stone, who's actually made a comic book of his own in the past called Champion. It's a really interesting story about a superhero, someone powerful like a Superman, but there's no other superheroes in the world. And, he really has to start weighing his sense of obligation to the world, because he has these amazing powers, with just trying to live a normal life like the rest of us do. Like, we don't all just donate all of our time to charity and humanitarian work. We could, we don't. Well, this superhero is sort of the same way. He's got a wife and kids and stuff, so he's got anyway. I think he's got a great idea there. He's working on some other comics, and anyway, I found out that yesterday when I was hanging out with him, found out it was his birthday. He kept it a secret. I said, "Let me draw you something." He said, "I would like to see Seattle real-life superhero Omega." So I said, "Sure." Champion had the black outfit, right? That's from Jack Pride. Did he have a black outfit? I thought it was more of a dark blue, and he had a cape. You think you read it? Okay, it's been a while. I mean, it was a couple years ago that it came out, so that's entirely possible. Yeah, it was a really cool idea. Anyway, he's a good friend. I've known him for a long, long time, and it was fun hanging out with him. And when I found out it was his birthday, I said, "Just let me draw you something. I don't have any money. I can't buy you even a drink, but let me draw something for you." And so he said, "Draw this." So anyway, hello, Darth Salad. Nice to have some familiar faces drop in. Thank you very much. Always appreciated. Sorry, I'm gonna work this just a little bit more. I just threw down the barest of sketches, and I just want to fine-tune it a little before I go to town with my ink. So, just shaping some of this stuff a little bit. And I'm having trouble because this lead is almost dead. Oh, that should be plenty of lead. Can I get it back in? Maybe. Nope, I broke it. All right, let's see. There, okay. Hope everybody out there is doing well. It was a pretty good convention. I felt like there weren't necessarily a ton of big name creators. I mean, there certainly were some amazing ones. Neil Adams and Art Adams. Wait, yeah. Sorry, tripped myself up when I realized that both of them have the same last name. Didn't expect that. There were definitely plenty of name creators, but I guess what threw me a little bit this year was not a ton from sort of my generation, almost like people that came up at the same time that I actually know and like to say hello to when they come into town because they're guests. So I didn't have a lot of folks that I knew to talk to at this year's Emerald City, but I still had a good time just hanging out with a few friends local. I mean, there were still a few people from out of town that it was nice to say hello to. Got to see my friend Rafer Roberts. He writes a lot of stuff for Valiant these days, and he and I knew each other when I lived in D.C. We hung out a bunch, so that was nice to see him. Who else? A few local artists. Met a few new people. Ed Brisson was a nice guy. Met Charles Soule's brother. He was sort of manning a booth for him. He was a nice guy to talk to. a writer named Landry Walker was interesting. He has an interesting image book coming up soon. So I met some interesting folks. Hello, Diego, and hello, Software Agents Corp, or AT, I believe. So yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. But also a little different. Just like I feel like usually there's, I don't know, 3 or 4 folks that just sort of came up about the same time that I was sort of getting into comics and learning to draw and stuff like that. There wasn't really much of that this year, so that's okay. Just tightening up some of my line work before I ink right now. Glad to hear you had a good time at the con. I always miss the cons near me. That's Jack Pride. Yeah, well, as long as I remember that there's a con coming up, I can get a pro pass because I usually put out at least one comic book a year, and I was able to get a pro badge this year. So I didn't really have any money to buy anything this year. I'm pretty poor right now, so I didn't buy anything at the convention, but I could at least get the badge. I could talk to friends, I could browse, I could take pictures of interesting cosplay. I put a bunch of those up on the Comic Tropes Facebook page. If you're curious, I just took a bunch of, interesting cosplay stuff. And that was about it. Yeah, just talking to people, just socializing. So it was a nice weekend. But it can be tiring, too. Emerald City is getting to be, or probably has been for a while now, a fairly big con. I mean, it's not exactly like the New York Comic-Con, but it's not that far away either, in terms of size and scope and everything. So, yeah, this is cool. Trying to think of like what the biggest stuff out of the convention was. It was probably just cosplay stuff. I don't know that any big announcements came out for any books. The image booth has now one whole side of it is just a massive poster for Oblivion Song, which is Robert Kirkman's book that comes out this Wednesday. I definitely recommend giving that a shot. It's an interesting sci-fi book, and he hasn't really written sci-fi in a while. I'm trying to remember the last thing that I would call sci-fi that he did. Tech Jacket, maybe, but that was still sort of a superhero book. Cloudfall, which hardly anybody remembers. Yeah, it's been a while since he's done sci-fi, so I think people will be surprised and will really enjoy Oblivion Song. Certainly, if you like his other stuff, you'll like it. It's still a Kirkman book. Alright, what kind of a belt do I want to give? Let's see, are there questions? Nope, no questions, okay. So I would be pulling it through like that, that, and that. Talking to myself a little bit, muttering. It's late, it is pretty late, but I'm going to try to bang this one out tonight, and then I've got some other stuff that I want to draw this week, so I might be right back on here tomorrow, earlier afternoon, my time. I'm talking like 6 hours earlier than this, and drawing some other different types of stuff then. That's the goal anyway. Keeping busy, keeping busy. I am close to where I want to start inking. Alright, I'll just go for it. 6 folks here in the chat. Well, it is pretty late, I suppose, so glad to have you here. I'll work on sort of the abs and lower back to start with. And anything that goes in front of it. I thought of this the other day. Do you prefer damsel superhero girlfriends or that heroes date each other? Oh, I see what you're saying. Does a superhero need to date another super-powered being? Is that more interesting, or is it more interesting to date a civilian? I suppose it can work both ways. I usually like a superhero to truly be unique, to be the most powerful, in other words. That's the reason they're the protagonist. But the supporting cast all needs something that still makes them a little bit more special than the average person. And, so usually they need to be able to handle their own in stressful situations, whether that's through, clever wits or fighting skill, or maybe even a slight superpower. For instance, I like Iron Fist. I like Iron Fist, and he usually dates Misty Knight. Misty Knight is maybe not a full-blown superhero. It depends on when she's presented. She has a bionic arm, It gives her a little bit of strength. She's got the skills of a New York detective, New York police detective, and she's been trained in some fighting styles by guys like Iron Fist and Colleen Wing. So she's a step way above like the average person. At the same time, like Iron Fist is significantly more powerful. So I guess I kind of like a relationship a little bit like that. But I can buy Lois Lane being somebody that Superman's attracted to. She's presented as like, really fiercely intelligent and more than capable of handling herself when there's a stressful situation. So I like both ways. It's all in the execution, I suppose. It's all in the execution. Let's see. Diego says, how about the girlfriend in the fridge? Yeah, that's not so hot. Not so hot. I do find it like pretty depressing when a character is only introduced in the briefest of ways and then killed off purely to give the main character motivation. I think that's a pretty cheap tactic. I don't think that that's very clever. I don't think that the writer has really figured anything out there. It's pretty easy, for instance, to write a scene where an innocent puppy gets hit by a car, and that's your introduction to the villain. So I think you need to do something a little bit more to give a story depth. That's my 2 cents. Daryl Doucette joins us and says, what sort of drawing tools are you using there? Oh, that's always a fun question. I like using, this is just a mechanical pencil that I happen to like by Pentel called a Graph Gear 1000. The reason I just like it is it's really durable. This is just a 0.5 mechanical pencil, so you can put whatever kind of lead you want in there. I usually put something soft so that I can just sort of lightly draw this in and then darken it up as needed. But this is just weighted well. There's a little bit of heft to it, and it helps me control the pencil. And then I mostly just use maybe some traditional Pigma Micron liners for some of the finer details I might hit in his mask. And right now I'm just using a Pigma from Sakura brush for some of the bolder shapes, the outlines almost, you'd say. So not a lot other than that. I have a few different brushes and a few different weights for this stuff. I've got a correction pen and an eraser and some a lot of Copics in case I feel like coloring this. Anyway, that's about it. But fun question, thanks. Jack says, I agree completely. I just really liked Invincible and Adam Eve because she could always contribute and not be relegated to barely being there or getting fridged. Sure, yeah, good point. And I guess that depends on what kind of a story we're telling. Is there just one protagonist, or is there a full-blown co-lead? Because I do like partnership type comics. Sometimes it's Batman and Robin, Iron Fist and Power Man. I like partnerships. Captain America often is paired with Falcon, and I kind of prefer those iterations when it's a team. I liked when Daredevil and Black Widow for a long time were a team. I think that is an interesting storytelling device that I don't think you see as much right now in superhero comics. But everything tends to come and go in cycles, doesn't it? So who knows? Maybe it won't be too long until we see more of that than we want. I'm very busy these days getting ready for comic tropes episodes that I want to film in Japan and Hong Kong in a couple weeks. Because I need to make sure that there's sort of content before and that I've written the scripts and planned the locations that I want to hit ahead of time. So it's right now, like the last couple weeks and these 2.5 weeks leading up to the trip, I'm doing a lot more for comic tropes than I usually do. A lot more. So tricky. Because I want there to be still new episodes coming out every week while I'm away. And then when I come home, I can edit them and release them. Keep everything going. And on top of that, like I was saying earlier about going to the convention this past weekend, I really have no spending money at all these days. So I'm trying to sell stuff. I'm trying to sell illustrations like at little shows locally. I'm trying to sell my old Lego sets because a lot of people like that. Like I sold a couple of those at the convention. Just announced it on Twitter, and fortunately there were people that were interested. So I'm just really busy getting ready for all of that, and this is sort of the closest that I have to any sort of downtime is just hanging out with all of you and sketching. This is my relaxation time. It's become some of my favorite stuff to do. Is just they're not always great drawings. It depends on, how tired I am. But it's fun to just hang out here and chat with all of you about comics and pop culture and stuff. I wonder if Daredevil's twin will try to steal Black Widow, asks Jack Pride. Yeah. I'm glad you saw that episode. Thank you. Diego says, Spidey's family is a great team in the Renew Your Vows comic. It's kind of a shame it all happened in an alternate universe. I really enjoyed that as well. That was really cool seeing that, Mary Jane and his daughter would, theoretically step up and help him be the hero he needs to be his support system, not be just people worrying in the background. And I like that in superhero shows, and I really feel that the one that set this trend was probably Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where her friends became sort of part of a team. Like, she was the one with the superhero powers, the super strength and all, but everybody sort of had a role to play. And I feel like you see that now on Flash and Arrow and Supergirl. They're surrounded by people that can support them in different ways. Maybe good technical skills on a computer. Maybe they just, know a ton of history or research, etc., etc. It's great. I like that when there's a supporting cast that can really raise the superhero up higher. I'm going to move something a little bit, and hopefully, I was afraid it would make my camera go fuzzy, but it didn't. Anyway. I'm excited for the Asia episodes of Comic Tropes. I hope you have the time of your life. I'm sure I'll have a great time. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Thanks, AT. I'll definitely have a good time no matter what. I mean, it's basically a vacation. I've just given myself some work while I'm there. But I think it'll be fine. It's not all going to be work. A lot of it's going to be, visiting all sorts of interesting locations, and we're even taking a day to go to see Disney in Tokyo. See Disney is nice. It's all sort of water themed. It's got Venetian canals and pirate ships on the bay and stuff like that. Like, there's just water everywhere. It's pretty amazing. I haven't been before. I know of it, and I'm looking forward to that. Just sort of, it's probably not the most authentically Japanese experience you can have, but I think it's still sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun for us for just one day to go to a unique Disney environment. I'm a fan of Disney in general. I think that they provide a pretty trying to think of what I would call the experience. It's when you're really immersed. It's full immersion. It's full immersion. So anyway, but doing a bunch of other stuff too. Going to see all sorts of shrines and temples. Do some unique shopping for art supplies. Try some new restaurants. Just explore, and we should be there right during the middle of Cherry Blossom Festival, so with some luck we'll get to see plenty of gorgeous falling cherry blossoms, which would be very nice. We shall see. Have any of you out there been to Japan or Hong Kong? I am aware that many of my viewers are from all over the world and have visited some pretty amazing places, so I don't want to act like I'm the only one that's going to do something exceptionally unique. It's a lot of fun, but a lot of people have done what I am doing. going to switch to a different pen just for sort of a different experience. And tell you what, I'm going to reach across the drawing here. Sorry. I can't find a way to position this mouse somewhere more convenient. Well, hold on, actually, maybe I can. Yeah, okay, there we go. I'm going to zoom in a little on this. Give me a second, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Beautiful, beautiful. Feels like that's not quite in focus like I want it to be. I don't know why that is. I want like a really, really nice, sharp image, and I feel like I just can't get it these days. I'll come back to that. You know what? Let me do one thing. Maybe I need to get a new camera. I thought that this one was plenty high resolution, but nothing lasts forever. Okay. Who are you drawing? How best to explain this? For a period of time, I used to be what is called a real-life superhero. I dressed up as this person and would patrol Seattle at night with a guy named Phoenix Jones. And we would do our best to break up fights, administer first aid to people that needed it, help people that were lost, stop purse snatchers, hunt down drunk drivers. It was yeah, it was an interesting year, and then I slowly got disillusioned that I was really doing anything to inspire people, which was my goal, and so I stopped doing that. I was known as Omega, and my friend Randy requested that I draw myself as that character. So yeah, a little embarrassing. I have plenty of stories to tell, but I don't know if I really feel like telling any right now. Give me some time. It's a weird time in my life. That was like a couple years ago that I used to do that last. I was new in town. I was completely fascinated by Phoenix Jones and what he was trying to accomplish by dressing up as a superhero and going out into the city at night and just trying to help people. And while I think we helped people from time to time, I just sort of came to feel like anybody could help anybody just by being in the right place at the right time, and we were just sort of, putting ourselves there by going out like late at night and, going to some scary neighborhoods and some hanging out, by the bars and clubs where people are drunk. So I didn't think that the costume part was really inspiring anyone, and so I sort of became disabused of the idea. I slowly kind of lost interest in it. Do I still have the costume? Yeah. Hi, Lewis. I still have it. Like, all it was like a, let's see. Okay, so under this, I would wear a bulletproof vest. It was also stab proof. It was like, the highest protection you can get for being puncture and stab and bulletproof. Then this is basically just a padded leather jacket that I customized. This was like, a motorcycle type of jacket with armored pads. This was some sort of like an airsoft mask, and underneath that I wore, like if a basketball player gets their nose broken, they can wear like a face guard. It sort of like absorbs any impact. So I had a basketball mask underneath an airsoft mask. And then like, I would carry around first aid supplies and things along that nature. Comic Tropes 100, Return of Omega. No, I don't think Omega will ever return. I think he had his day. But that's not to say I wouldn't consider making a comic book just like maybe like a big one-shot type thing, just talking about what kind of adventures we got into, talking about the fights or when we helped people, things like that, because there was plenty of drama, but I don't know, we'll see. Maybe someday. You definitely meet some interesting characters trying to do something like this. Let's see. Is it easy finding this identity online? I don't know. I've never really looked, but I did have a Facebook page as this character during my time. So yeah, you can look for Omega, or maybe Omega RCSM, because we were the Rain City superhero movement. Let's see, how long did it take for you to pencil this? I penciled it basically right when I started, so like 20 minutes, like just the outline. I'd had like a super brief rough, and then I added a few details, and now I'm just really shaping it through the inking process. There's not a lot to these pencils today. Marcelo Salinas says, Chris, can you tell me a quick bedtime story? There once was a man who knew of a dragon. But not just any dragon. This was a friendly dragon, and all the village would love him so. So the man introduced everybody to the dragon, and they all lived happily ever after. You did say quick. There were no twists in that story. It just happened. Good night, Marcelo. Sigamigs, would you ever consider doing a digital art live stream? I would, Sigamigs, if I had a good drawing tablet, and I just don't right now. I have a Microsoft Surface, which is touch sensitive, and I think it's really good for drawing on. But it's not the easiest thing to stream from because it's just a tablet essentially. I've looked into it, and it would really be tricky to stream from the Microsoft Surface. So I can do some digital drawing, but can I stream it? Not easily. If someday down the road I have some money, I would like to get myself, a better tablet to hook up to a computer, like a Cintiq, a Wacom Cintiq. That would be nice. I have had tablets in the past, but I don't have a good one right now. Maybe someday. That would be nice. I would also consider streaming like some light animation. I don't really know animation programs all that well. All I know is drawing, essentially frame by frame, but every once in a while I do like to mess around with that and try to make something. And I do have an idea of something I want to do this summer, a very short animation for an episode of Comic Tropes. So that's all the way in July. That's how far I think ahead, guys. I'm already working on an episode in July. So not all the episodes require that kind of prep, but every once in a while, I have one in mind, and I think, okay, how long is it going to take to do this? And I have to really plan ahead. A quick Google search pulls up an article called Omega Rolls Solo. That's probably about me. Marcelo asks if I've read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's his favorite manga. I've not read that one. I have been reading a bunch more manga lately. Sorry, I bumped the camera. To prepare for my trip to Japan, but the stuff I'm reading is a little more modern. I'm reading One Piece, and although that's not that modern, I mean, it's modern in that it's still going today, but the stuff I'm reading is from back in 95 or 98, whenever it started. It was 20 years ago, I guess. So I'm reading that. I'm reading My Hero Academia, and I like that one quite a bit. That's pretty good. I just finished Bakuman recently. That was an interesting look into what it takes to be an illustrator and writer in manga, and successful at Weekly Shonen Jump specifically. That was a really fun book. What other manga am I reading right now? Maybe that's it, I guess. I'm reading up on Dragon Ball, which I've never seen that anime. I still haven't read the actual comic, but I know that it's an influence for a lot of what's popular in Weekly Shonen Jump, and I'm going to be talking about that in my episode. So I'll probably read some before I do that review. I'm reading on how Dragon Ball was so successful for so long that it was a direct influence on what does well for a battle manga in Weekly Shonen Jump, and how it influenced One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, among others. So I just need to know that kind of stuff when I'm speaking about something like One Piece or Weekly Shonen Jump, so that I just sort of know the history. So Bakuman was really fantastic. JoJo is still going today. I guess I didn't realize that, but I also heard that it really changed somewhere along the way. I'm not saying better or worse. I'm saying that the protagonist characters sort of shifted over time. But I don't know if that's 100% right because I haven't actually read it. But that's what I heard. by the way, while I'm reading all of this stuff, a lot of it I'm not necessarily a massive fan of. I just really want to be familiar with it so that I can review it appropriately. But I'm not like, I don't dislike, I guess I'm thinking very specifically right now of One Piece. I think that at age like, I don't know, 13 to 15, something like that, I think I would have thought One Piece was fantastic. But that's sort of the age range that it's roughly aimed at. You know, it definitely, like, you could stay with it if you'd gotten introduced to it earlier. And I'm reading it now, and I am enjoying it. But I'm not enjoying it the same way that I enjoy, like, something like Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips on Kill or Be Killed. Like, that speaks to me a little bit more because it's about the human condition and crime, and these are topics that I'm a little more interested in at this point in my life than sort of just fantasy and just fight scenes and stuff. But it is interesting to learn about this stuff, and you know, it was just something that I hadn't read before. I would say my favorite manga is anything written by a guy named Naoki Urasawa. I did do an episode about him like early on in my YouTube show's run. Maybe someday I'll have to revisit that for like a different title. I really like Monster and Pluto. Those are some of my like all-time favorite comics. I think that they're fantastic. I think he's just a great writer and a great artist, like maybe the best living writer-artist today. I know that's a lot, and it sounds like hyperbole, but we're all entitled to, you know, our personal favorites, and for me, I think it is Naoki Urasawa, even though I wouldn't normally say that, like, manga is necessarily my favorite form of comic books or something, but, you know, just sure like, good talent is good talent. Simple as that. So, yeah. Let's see. Jose Fernandez joins us and says, currently working on some narrative for one of my second-year class assignments at the Kubert School. Congratulations on getting into the Kubert School. And this is keeping me sane. Thanks for the live stream at such an ideal time. Well, that's really nice to hear. Thank you. And congrats on getting into the school, and I hope it goes well for you. I think in retrospect, I would have really enjoyed going to something like the Kubert School or the Rhode Island School of Design or like New York one. I think I would have gotten a lot out of going to an art school, but it never was really presented to me as like a realistic option, like, oh, you know, you can study to be an artist. It just didn't come up when I was young. Nobody was like discouraging me, and I always drew, but I don't think anybody in my small town south of Boston really knew enough about art schools to tell me, oh, you should consider such and such a place. It's not a regret because I didn't really know about it, but I think that would have been an interesting path for my life to have taken. Let's see. Diego says, are you doing something for the Avengers Infinity War release? Are you excited for the movie? Yes and yes. Yeah, I'll definitely review something Avengers related at that point in time. It may not specifically relate to the Infinity Gauntlet itself. Although, even though I've covered Infinity War once, I think at some point I will look at Infinity Gauntlet. It's just not necessarily... I think a lot of people have read it that would already be interested in it, so it's not like a huge priority for me to hit that one. But I definitely will have something Avengers related at that point in time, and yeah, of course I'm excited for it. I mean, like, I like all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies more or less. Now, some of them I won't watch them. Like, you know, am I going to pull up Thor: The Dark World? Like, probably unlikely. But if I'm flipping through the stations on a weekend and it comes on, I'll watch it and be entertained. Anyway, some stuff I really love. Sigamig says, even at a young age, shonen anime and stuff never really appealed to me. I didn't grow up like with it as an option. Like it wasn't being really imported here when I was young. There was some manga and of course some anime. Not really Shonen Jump. Like we didn't really know about that when I was a kid. What else? When I first watched your videos, oh, this is a new person, Hankification. When I first watched your videos, I watched them on shuffle and randomly got like 7 episodes where you drink in a row. I thought, this poor man is obviously a high-functioning alcoholic. Hope he's okay. You're not wrong. It depends on how I'm doing as to how much I'm drinking. But yeah, I think I did too much of that early on. I was having fun. And I honestly was like, not many people were watching my videos at that point. So, and honestly, today, I'm still not like watched by that many people. So, you know, I do what's fun for me. But I also thought about it and I was like, well, I don't want someone to like feel like I drink every episode because that's not a good message to necessarily be putting out there. So I pulled back on that. Not to say that I won't do it again if it seems fun, but you probably won't see me doing that regularly anytime in the future. I am actually working on pulling the pen towards me more to try to learn a new way of control. And what I've noticed is that does make me use my full arm when I'm drawing instead of just moving my wrist for little motions. It does give you a certain degree more control, but it takes some getting used to. Like I've got the habit of just like, you know, holding my hand like against the paper and just like lots of little motions and pushing it up like this. But if you pull, you can like use your whole arm, and if you can trust your whole arm, you do get more control, and therefore you kind of get a cleaner line. So I'm still learning stuff all the time. That's why I like drawing. I feel like I'm always learning something. It's really, really cool. My favorite is the one where you eat the peppers. That's from Marcella. That one was early on, right? That was like maybe my 3rd episode ever, and that was fun. That was actually a lot of, like, in the moment, it was really, really intense. But even though it was intense, I personally still thought it was kind of funny. Like I was feeling something real, and I was like, no matter what the review is saying or whether the reaction is like that interesting, it's an honest reaction because I was really feeling it. And so that kind of cracks me up in retrospect. I haven't gone back and watched it, but when I think about it, it's funny to me. Yeah. Wish I had more ideas like that. I find brutal honesty. Oh, I hadn't centered it. Sorry. I find brutal honesty can be very frequently very funny. Like because you're making yourself very open and vulnerable, and I think that honesty and vulnerability can lend themselves very, very easily towards being funny because you're sort of taking yourself down a peg. You're not setting yourself up as like cool. Cool is the opposite of funny. Cool is cool, but funny is the opposite of cool. Let's see. Jose Fernandez says, I feel school isn't a necessity due to the endless information you can find online. But I think the most beneficial aspect of being in such an environment is the potential of networking. Absolutely. That makes sense. I'd like to hear you speak a little on networking. Let's pick your brain. Okay, 1 second. That's a really good topic. You're right. Networking is at least as important as hard work and talent. You need all these things to be successful. You can be really, really talented, but if you don't actually sit down and draw something, what's the point? Like if you just rarely draw and it's beautiful when it comes out, well, that's nice. So you have to be talented and hardworking. But again, now you're producing all these pages. Doesn't mean anything. You need to get your break, and the most likely way you're going to get discovered is just through people seeing and sharing your work, and eventually it'll be put in front of the right person that can give you an opportunity when you're open to seizing that opportunity. So networking is incredibly important, and sometimes that can be the hardest thing for an artist. A lot of artists aren't necessarily socially outgoing and stuff. That can take work, or at least it feels like work sometimes. So you have to train yourself to be good at socializing. A lot of my friends will tell me, Chris, you're so outgoing and so friendly and you listen to people. And I go, it's not natural to me. My natural inclination is to be an introvert, to almost be a hermit. I want to just read and watch TV. I want to absorb stories if I was left to my druthers. But then I think, well, that doesn't get me anywhere. You know what I mean? And that can get boring. I feel happier when I've socialized, but it's a little bit of work for me. So I do that. I make an effort, and it pays off. So how do you properly network for comics? Like, where are you going to find the right people that can give you the right opportunities? Well, it's a very different environment now than when I was, like coming out of college and stuff. Like when I came out of college and, was of working age and stuff, the internet existed, but social media wasn't much of a thing. Excuse me, I'll recenter this. Nowadays, social media can introduce you to a lot of people, but you can't trust that that's going to be the only thing, because in-person interactions count for more. It makes more of an impression. It doesn't just fade into the noise. So you have to sort of make your own opportunities, I've always believed. I've always thought that the people that are most successful are those that create their own opportunities. So let me give some examples, because I do feel that I know some successful people. I'll limit it to 2 people that are friends of mine that are successful, and I'm going to take a small. Well, no, I'll keep drawing, I guess, but I'm focusing on talking to you right now about networking. 2 of my more successful friends are Robert Kirkman, who does The Walking Dead and for a long time Invincible. He's got Oblivion Song coming out, Outcast. Another really successful friend is Ken Jeong, the actor, Dr. Ken. He's been in the Hangover movies. He had Dr. Ken, his own sitcom. He was on Community, a bunch of stuff like that. These are 2 very successful people that I knew before they had any success. But I see similarities with what they do and how they create their own opportunities. Again, talent, hard work, and then networking. So they both had that in common. Lots of talent, lots of hard work. What did they do to network? Let me focus a little more on Kirkman, I guess. Maybe I don't need 2 examples, but maybe I'll come back to Ken. But for Kirkman, he self-published his own book. He did all the research and figured out, how do you publish a comic book? Because no matter what, even if you're trying to pitch to Image, IDW, Boom Studios, Oni, whatever it is, Marvel, DC, if you've already published something, you've already got your foot in the door more than 80% of the people that are interested in trying to be comic book professionals. Self-publishing isn't easy, but you don't have to lose a lot of money in it. And I'm not going to get into all the steps about it right now, unless after a while somebody asks that question. We can get into talking about how to self-publish. But that's something he did. He self-published Battle Pope. He got it out in a timely, consistent manner. He made sure it was the best product that he could make at that point in time. Not only did that give him an opportunity to keep self-publishing Battle Pope and make a little bit of money each time, he self-published a few other people's stories in anthologies and stuff like that. Matt Fraction, now that I'm thinking of it, one of his very first books was published by Funkotron, by Robert Kirkman. Excuse me, I need to close a window that's popped up. So, self-publishing created his own opportunity because now he could go to a convention and he had a product, that showed what he could do. And it could get him into a conversation with other professionals, publishers, creators, etc. So he made that opportunity for himself by investing some money in himself, publishing that. That didn't come out of nowhere, he didn't just submit ideas to a publisher and then one day one of them said, "Yep, this is the one, well, come work for us." He showed that he could do it himself. He didn't, in other words, as soon as you show that you sort of don't need someone and you can get it done, they're like, well, now I want to be in business with this person. You make your own opportunities. Self-publishing is not, by the way, the only way you need to do that, but to network. But it's an example of creating your own opportunity. You could put together a group of like-minded people in your own town, right? I used to do that in DC. I helped organize a group of people. We called ourselves the DC Conspiracy. We were all people that liked comics. We liked to write and draw. And we started self-publishing our own anthologies of comics. And we started putting on a small convention every single year that would also have other crafters and sideshow freaks and musical bands, etc. So we created our own opportunities. That's where Rafer Roberts came from before he was writing for Valiant. So when you talk about networking, it's not just about being social, talking to people at comic conventions, talking to people on online forums and social media. It's creating an opportunity where the people you're interested in talking to, want to talk to you. They want to talk to you because you've already sort of accomplished something. So you don't have to... Anyway, maybe I'm being a little long-winded. It was an interesting question. I think that that anyone with a little bit of talent can make it in their chosen field as long as they put in the work and network by creating their own opportunities. I hope that makes sense. I'm sorry if that got long-winded. Some of the stuff I was going to say about Ken making his own opportunities was the fact that he would just go to every open mic and do stand-up, and he would work on honing his act. And then he would get invited to host shows at just small bars and pubs and stuff, but he was always doing that. He was always open to every opportunity in front of him. And I think that paid off. I think he created his own opportunities in that regard. He did the work. Even if you're not a professional yet, you have to put in the work. What a great question. Some people were having a conversation on the side about, I guess, Shape of Water. I missed a few things. Sorry, folks. I missed a few of those comments. I liked Shape of Water a lot, by the way. I I think it deserved the Oscar. I think that there were a couple other movies that I would have been just as happy to see win, but it was. I liked it a lot personally. I thought it was, when I saw it, I was like, "This is great. This deserves a lot of attention," and it's getting a lot of attention. That's nice. Okay, Jose Fernandez says, super excited for Oblivion. But absolutely, with all the technology available today, one would be crazy not to use all the resources available. That's true, because you never know which one's going to hit. I have peers who want to wait until they get hired, and it's absurd. No one is stopping you from doing what you want to do. Go out and get it done. That being said, just published 2 books myself since August, and working on 2 more at the moment. Thanks for touching on creating your own opportunities. Hard work definitely beats talent any day of the week. It does, because if you're putting out a product and you're only like 70% as good as the guy that's an excellent artist but puts out no content, you're going to get the job, and you're going to get better because you keep working. So, Hankification says, I liked both Shape of the Water and Get Out a lot. Me too. Those were 2 great movies. I got Get Out for Christmas because I liked it so much. I was like, I want this one. I also liked The Big Sick quite a bit. That one worked for me. I liked Dunkirk. I did like Dunkirk. I probably won't own Dunkirk, but I liked it a lot. Haven't seen... I liked Lady Bird. I haven't seen 3 Billboards yet. I haven't seen... What was the other big one? The Darkest Hour. I haven't seen that one. I don't know if I'm overlooking anything else, but yeah, so some of them I've seen, some of them I haven't. I like to try to see most of what gets nominated for Best Oscars, mostly out of curiosity. I just really like movies, so I'm like, okay, if this is considered prestige, let me see why. Oh, I guess Call Me By Your Name I haven't seen either. That one got a few nominations. I don't remember how many. But I'm curious to see that one. Oops. Jesus, I keep forgetting to center this properly. I'm so sorry, folks. I just wanted Disaster Artist to win original screenplay. Wait, that was adapted screenplay, though. That was adapted, because it was adapted from a book. What did win adapted? Because I was sort of a little curious if Logan could potentially win, but I was like, I don't know if it deserves it. But I also think it was better than its source material. I do think it was an improvement. Yeah, what did win for best adapted screenplay? I forget already. No, I don't know. Somebody will look it up, I bet. Dumb me, it's actually my favorite book. Wow, favorite book. I'm like, we'll say 80% of the way through the book. I saw the movie first, and then I was like, oh, I'm curious what else was in there that didn't get adapted, because I enjoyed the movie. I did. It was a very fun movie. I don't think that Disaster Artist stands on its own as well as some other things. Let me explain. Disaster Artist is a really fun movie, no doubt. If you've seen The Room already, it's better. I had seen The Room the week before, then I saw Disaster Artist, and it paid off because it relies to a degree that you're familiar with The Room. To a degree, it relies on you knowing that. You can enjoy Disaster Artist without seeing it. You'll get a little more out of it if you've seen The Room. However, I think that the movie Ed Wood, that's a movie about another, like, filmmaker that didn't sort of realize that he was making bad movies, or if he did, like, not on the same level that everybody else realized it. But Ed Wood, I think, stands 100% on its own. You don't have to have seen Plan 9 from Outer Space, you know. You can watch Ed Wood, and it stands on its own as a really, really good movie. That's one of Tim Burton's best, I think. Anyway. Oh, Call Me By Your Name was one Best Adapted Screenplay? Okay, yeah, I haven't seen that one yet, so I can't say whether that deserved it, in my opinion. Like that matters. Interesting. But I think it might still actually be playing at my local art house movie theater, so maybe I should go see it. I wanted to go see a movie today just for the heck of it. I've got Movie Pass. I don't know how many of you out there have Movie Pass, but it makes it like, why not go to a movie every day almost? You just pay a monthly fee, and then you can see one free movie. Not free, but I mean, because you're paying a monthly fee, but you can see one movie a day at any theater, as long as it isn't sold out in that moment. You can't buy ahead of time or anything like that. But I was too busy. I couldn't get to the movies today. Would have been fun. Too busy. You know what? I'm going to spot a bunch of blacks, so I'm going to bust out one of my not as good brushes, because this brush is still in good shape. Let me see what I got. Let's see how this one does. Yeah, it's sort of a little gray, but if I use it twice, it'll start doing well. Yeah, that works. Better than using up my good brush. Eventually a brush starts like either splitting or running out of ink or something, so you don't want to like run it ragged on just spotting some blacks. I hope that when I talk about like art technique, I'm not like talking down to anyone. I know some of you know more than I do, but some people here know less, so I'm just trying to impart little tiny bits of little tidbits here and there of information. Let's see. Royfield is here. Says, oh, and so I missed a bunch. Okay, Israel, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you. Royfield has been here before. Just watched 3 Billboards. It's very good. Chris, I'll be back in 25 minutes. I'm watching your Daredevil fake twin brother. Well, thank you. Thank you. I always appreciate it when people watch my videos. Jose says, been on the search for cool sci-fi books lately. Came across Paradiso from Image. Have you read it? I have not. I'm not familiar with Paradiso. Do you have any recommendations for cool recent sci-fi books? That's a good question. Let me think for a half a moment. What's a good recent sci-fi book? And if anybody out there has a recommendation, this is the perfect opportunity. Like, throw out your idea. Have I read anything that would count as sci-fi? I know I have. I'm blanking right now. Oh, I know what I've came across. Bitch Planet. Bitch Planet is good, sort of apocalyptic or dystopian, not apocalyptic, dystopian sci-fi. Just started reading that one by Kelly Sue DeConnick. Didn't necessarily think it would be my cup of tea before I read it, but it's really good sci-fi. It is. It's a fascinating premise. I don't want to spoil too much. That's what I'd recommend. Did you watch Amour? Did you watch Amour or The Shape of Water? Not Amour. I'm not familiar with that one. I did watch Shape of Water, and I loved it. It was great. It was really good. McNuggy's here. Hello, McNuggy. Do you go to the movies alone or always with other people? Both. Probably a little more often I go with friends or with my girlfriend. But I'll go to movies by myself. What do I care? Like, once you're there, like, it's not like you can really have a conversation. So, yeah, I go to movies by myself plenty. I don't mind. It's just about, like, finding the time and That's the only hurdle for me. I'll go to movie a day if I can find the time. I'll also watch basically any kind of movie, and try to enjoy it on its own merits. So yeah, I like documentaries. I'll watch a romantic comedy maybe, or even like a kids animated movie as long as it's done well. Like I'll watch something by Pixar or most Disney stuff, and I can usually enjoy that. I'm just saying, like, those aren't my first choices, but I'll watch any sort of genre of movie as long as I have the time. I'll even watch intentionally bad movies if they're, like, known for being entertainingly bad. If it's boring bad, I'll avoid it. But if it's entertaining, and if it's average or something, then I'm probably going to try to avoid it. But if it's entertainingly bad, I'll keep my eye out for something like that. You know who I think deserves more attention for making like really bad movies, but like for some reason like he isn't super popular with like the mainstream for making bad movies. People that like bad movies know him. The guy named Neil Breen. Neil Breen. He's made like 4 or 5 movies that are honestly at least as entertainingly bad as The Room. Like just ineptly made and total ego vanity projects. Oh my god, they're so funny. And it not intentionally. He's legit like he thinks making a cool movie. Oh, bad. All right, let's see. Cookie Madison, hey, just tuned in, so you may have started out with this, but can you talk a little bit about the pens you are using and the technique? Okay, well, I don't know if I'm the right person to talk technique, okay, because I'm not, I always want to be better, and I'm not trying to slag myself, but I don't think I'm the best artist, I think I've got a lot of, so I don't know that I can say a whole lot about technique. I did briefly talk about some of the tools earlier, but I don't mind quickly going over it again. I laid things out very, very quickly with just a normal mechanical pencil. I like using this Pentel Graph Gear. It's a 0.5. I like to put in a soft lead. The reason I like this is just because it's got a little bit of heft to it, so it's well balanced. It's really easy to grip, and there's just a tiny bit of weight, so it really feels like I'm doing something. I like something with a little bit of weight. And then right now I'm just spotting blacks, so I've got this Pigma Sakura that's a medium that can like sort of fit in between some of these areas. It's also a brush that it is starting to sort of split and isn't in great condition, so I don't mind using it up on like spotting a lot of black. I don't care about keeping it in great condition. For some of the outer edges of my drawing, when I just want a little bit of variation of line width, that's when I use like a fine Pigma Sakura brush, because I like the line weights to vary as much as possible on the outside, and ideally everywhere. So a brush or a brush pen works well there. I sometimes will use an actual brush and ink. I have quills or nibs, maybe I should say. I don't love working with them. Like here's a standard Hunt 102. I don't mind, but it scratches at the paper, and then I just don't love feeling that for whatever reason. So that's just a little quirk of mine. And then usually for like the really fine detail that I'm doing on like this mask, just like to weather it or something, I'll use some Pigma microns, because they're just like nice and thin. So I like using that for detail work, thin detail work. Let's see. Cool question. Hope that helped a little. Israel Lazo says divine. I don't know what that means. Hankification. It's BS that Paddington 2 didn't receive any nominations. It's the highest rated film of the year and sits at 100% Rotten Tomatoes rating. I've heard that Paddington 2 is really good. I haven't seen it. I probably will at some point. Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? Just because something was, like, popular, like, it was also well reviewed. That is strange that that didn't get a nomination for anything. There's obviously something charming about it, so maybe it's not the best screenplay or the best picture, but there's got to be some aspect of it that we should appreciate. Segamig says, I started reading Rocket Girl from Image. I haven't read that one, so I'm not... Oh, Saga! Saga, someone says, is the best if you haven't read it. Hankification, because somebody was asking about good sci-fi comics. Saga is great. A little bit of fantasy, but definitely counts as sci-fi. I love Saga. Saga's fantastic. So is Paper Girls. Paper Girls is sci-fi. Also by Brian K. Vaughan and also at Image. That's another good sci-fi book. Wish I'd thought of that one earlier when the question came up. McNuggy says, and I'm taking a small break from drawing just to answer some questions, and then I'll catch up. McNuggy says, the first movie I watched with my boyfriend was B-Movie because he only enjoys bad movies. I don't know. I don't know about that. I couldn't watch that one. And I liked Seinfeld, the sitcom. Couldn't watch B-Movie. Speaking of art techniques, this is Jose. I've been on the hunt for a balance between an opaque white that's also fluid enough to run through a nib. What do you use for your whites? What do I use? I mean, I've got just this little, like, Presto Correcto pen, but this is... It's fat enough that it's called a fine point. It's okay for, like, certain things, depending on the size and scope that you're drawing. If you're drawing a space scene, and you want to start, like... You just want to, like, black everything out, and then you want to, like, maybe draw a few little, like, planets or something, this can work for that. This can work for that. And you can even, like, sort of do a quick streak. And even if it like fades or breaks up, that can look, like a shooting star. You could also just sort of dip a toothbrush in whiteout and, flick it to get an interesting sort of spray of stars to look like, a cluster or a spiral or something like that. I haven't found a great pen for doing whiteout stuff. My friend Tony Moore is fantastic at that stuff, and it's just been too long since I've talked to him about what he uses. He'd be the one to ask. Look for him in social media, Tony Moore. Ask him what he does for whiting things out. He'll point you in the direction of a good tool. Hankification. He likes to eat cat food in the desert. What am I... going back to, yes, I was talking about Neil Breen movies. Right. And Israel says Fateful Finding is amazing. Yes. Hankification says, and he's the best hacker. Marcelo says, Chris, give us a quick opinion on hentai. Not what turns me on, so I'm not overly familiar. I definitely remember in the 90s, late 90s, no, not late 90s, now that I'm thinking of it, more like early 90s, I was getting into some anime because I'd seen Akira. What else had I seen? Maybe like Ninja Scroll or something? Vampire Hunter D. It's hard to remember exactly what was out late 80s, early 90s. But I'd seen some stuff that was really good. And in those days, there was no internet yet, so you couldn't read really reviews of what is a good anime versus what isn't. So I would just go to the store and just sort of like read the cover, read the back cover, and look at the artwork that was shown and just try to like cross my fingers. And I ended up getting a bunch of stuff that I didn't care for, and it kind of burned me out for quite a while on anime because I'd just seen some stuff that I didn't think was that great. And I remember one was called like, it was a whole series, so I was a little interested because the artwork on the front looked good. It was called La Girl Blue, I'm pretty sure. But I didn't get it. There was something that was like, maybe there's something a little weird about this one. And years later, I found out that was hentai, that was basically porn. I was really glad that I hadn't picked that up because my parents definitely would have seen it at some point. I was living at home. I was young, and so I was glad that I didn't buy that. But I don't know what's good or bad. What do you mean, can we get a review of the trilogy? I don't know what trilogy. I've lost the thread, Israel. Sorry. I'm not sure what trilogy we're talking about. Jose says, the Presto is definitely cool. It's super opaque. I've also used Pro White, but you need to water it down. Tony Moore is awesome. Definitely will ask him. Yeah, do. Sigamig says, while we're on hentai, I recommend one called Henshin by Shindal, one of the most messed up stories that lingered with me for days. I've never heard of that. McNuggy says, my parents bought me a harem anime on accident when I was 15. The days when you could accidentally get stuff like that. Yeah. I grew up both pre and post internet. I'm of that generation that like up through okay, it's like I knew about a version of the internet by junior high. It was still pre-AOL days, though. You know, you had like CompuServe, and I can't remember all of them right now. And there were BBSs, bulletin board services, and I even made one back in the day. I don't remember where it was or what it was called. But basically, the internet wasn't much of a thing. So you couldn't get porn online, is my overall point, when I was a growing kid. So how did you find porn before you could buy it for yourself? For some reason, anybody at least 40 or in that range can tell you this. There always seemed to be porn out in the woods. You could always find porn magazines out in the woods. If you ever came across like a fort in the woods, a little fort, like I'm talking like, you know, like a tree house type fort, you'd always find porn back then. People just left porn magazines in hard-to-reach places, and it's like they must have been leaving it for like little teenagers and stuff to find, right? I don't know, but I definitely came across some myself, and I've heard from other people that grew up in other states. Like, you know, in college, all of a sudden you realize like everybody had an experience of finding porn in the woods. Let's see. Oh, the Neil Breen trilogy. Except I think that Neil Breen has like 4 movies, doesn't he? That's what threw me, because I think he has 4 movies. And none of them are, like, connected. So that threw me. But, yeah, any Neil Breen movie is entertaining. If you like bad movies, trust me, you won't be bored. They're delightful. I'm going to move this down and work on some stuff. Okay, I took too long on my break. I'm so sorry. I was having fun talking to all of you, but if anyone ever tries to like watch this, like they're just going to be like, won't Chris shut up and go back to drawing? That's why I tuned in for those sweet, sweet drawings. No one says that. Sigmig says, I heard that back in the day, video rental stores would sometimes mix up adult anime with kid movies because it was animation. I could believe that like a mom and pop store could have done that. I never really heard of that happening. But I do have a great story. It's not mine to tell, but my buddy won't mind. So my pal Jason grew up in Red Hook, Brooklyn. He grew up in New York, and he worked at a video store at like something really young, like age 14 or something. Like he got some sort of special permission to work at a video store, I think. Anyway, so he would often rent like sort of like horror movies to watch with his buddies. You know, maybe you'd see some boobs, or you'd at least see like some sort of graphic kill, etc. And he rents Salem's Lot, which was actually a TV movie, Stephen King TV movie back in the day that was still pretty well respected. But anyway, so he and his buddies start watching it. And if you've ever seen it, probably not many of you have, because again, it was a TV movie. You know, it starts with like shots of like the night sky essentially, and like, you know, the font would with like the credits was like coming up, and you know, spooky music. In other words, it's credits, and they put it on, and you see the credit for the movie come up, and it just says Pet Cemetery, not Pet Cemetery. What did I say the movie was? Salem's Lot. Excuse me, totally blank there. I'm getting old. So it just says Salem's Lot, and they hear Salem's Lot, the movie, starring, and they start listing some names, and they get to an actor whose name is George Dzundza, but the guy couldn't pronounce it right. He goes, starring George Dzundza, and like my friend Jason and his friend are like watching this, going like, this is so unprofessional. Like, how did this TV movie ever become popular? They're kids. They haven't clued in as to what's going on yet. And I'll explain in a minute. So they're watching it. And the first shot you see is like a car go by, like the town sign. And the sound effect goes, yeah, meep, meep. And they go, what? And they finally realize someone had dubbed over the audio on the whole movie. So they were just like listening to someone narrate it and just being a total goofball. I love that you could come across stuff like that in the video store back in the day. You can't find that in like, you never accidentally get like the wrong thing on Netflix or Redbox. So you don't get those kind of stories anymore. Vampire Hunter D makes me picture the protagonist from Civilian Justice hunting vampires. Yeah, that's not too far off, is it? I'm leaning down a little to just sort of do a zipper pattern over here. And then I'll pop up and read what's in the chat window. It was a fun chat with you guys tonight. Thank you. Starring George Dzundza. And if you don't know George Dzundza, he was a cop in the first 2 seasons, I want to say, of the original Law and Order TV show. All right. Cookie Madison says, also discovered hentai by accident in a similar way to you, but I innocently rented it, and yow, that is weird. Hankification says that he is 31 and Swedish. Is this an original character, asks Israel. Sort of. I was talking about this at the beginning of the stream. This is a request. A friend asked me to draw this. Several years back, I briefly, like for a year or so, I used to put on a superhero suit and go out and patrol Seattle at night with a guy named Phoenix Jones. They call it like real life superhero. And eventually I got a little disillusioned. I was like, well, wait a minute, like, you know, yeah, sort of helping people, but just by being in the right place at the right time, which isn't hard. Like anybody can go out at night to, you know, the more crime-heavy sections of town and, you know, bars when they're closing and just be in the right place to help. So I don't need a costume for that. And then I thought that maybe it would make more of an impression with the city, like people would like start like doing their civic duty a little bit more or something. I was so naive. I was so naive, folks. So, I was briefly, all things considered, I was briefly a real-life superhero, which makes me feel like such a douche saying that. I am not trying to toot my own horn. It was a weird time in my life. But my friend thinks it's interesting and cool and asked me to draw it. And it was his birthday, so I said yes. I And these days when I draw, I stream it. So that's what you're seeing. So is it an original character that I created? Yes. It was a character that I embodied, I guess you'll say. Pretty silly. I know. I know, folks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You are such an interesting person, Chris. No. I think everybody has plenty of interesting real-life stories to tell. You're just seeing me in small doses, and I'm trying to be a good host by talking about interesting things. So if I've given you the impression that I'm interesting, I apologize. That is not fair. No, that's kind of you. Did you consider yourself a vigilante? Not really. Our group read all of Seattle, Washington, like all of the laws. We read all the laws like that had to do with like, you know, getting involved in a skirmish or administering first aid and stuff like that. So we followed the laws. Nothing we did was illegal. We didn't walk around with concealed weapons, even though you're allowed in Seattle. You could like walk around with not concealed weapons, but you could walk around with like, you know, a sword on your back, and that's legal here, or, you know, a rifle or something. We never walked around like with guns or knives. Some of us had tasers and stuff, and I'll just tell you that these gloves that I wore were lead lined, so when I punched someone, they dropped. Like, they just dropped. So anyway, did you wear it or him? I wore this. I used to wear this. It was I had a bulletproof vest, a motorcycle jacket with like armored pads that I sort of customized with details. I wore a basketball player's like face mask to avoid like if I was punched in the face, like it distributes the force, and then I wore an airsoft mask over a balaclava so that my head was sort of protected. And then, you know, I'd have things like, you know, I'd just have the police on speed dial on my phone. I'd have maybe like, always have a first aid kit with all sorts of weird things. Weird as in like, if somebody sprays mace or something like that, and some of those guys carried mace, I didn't really like to do that, but like, you know, if they carried like pepper spray or something, and that gets in your eyes, you know, it can really sting. So I had these things called Sudicon wipes. You could wipe it across your eye, and it like stopped the stinging. I had things that would almost counter what like my nutty teammates would walk around with, as well as like bandages and things like that. I don't know what else. Like I wore red reflective stuff all over, like the front and back, so that like, because this was like a black jacket but with like red reflective parts, so that like you could see me. And I feel so goofy talking about this stuff. Did you have an archfiend? No, I really didn't. Did you hide your secret identity from your girlfriend to keep her safe? No. My fiance, I knew from the beginning that this is something I was doing, and I kept my identity a secret the whole time I was doing it. I've only like recently on like some of these streams mentioned that I've done this. I haven't really talked about it anywhere else. And I'm toying with the idea of like doing like a comic book just to talk about some of the sort of adventures that you know, did have every once in a while. It could be interesting to a degree. I mean, there's a little bit of action, a little bit of, there's fights and stuff like that, and there's helping people that have been, like, lost, and stopping drunk drivers and things like that got, like, pretty hairy, or helping people that have gotten injured, meeting some real weirdos. So there's some interesting stuff to tell. I don't know. I don't know if there's a market for that or not, though, that people might just sort of go like, well, you're a weirdo. And I'd be like, well, you're not wrong. Oh, geez. I keep not centering this stuff. 31 in Swedish was in reference to finding porn in the woods as a kid, in case that got lost in the shuffle. Thank you, Hankification. Did not realize that. America is wild, says McNuggy. I forget, McNuggy, are you from Australia? Would you say you're the Punisher of the Seattle superhero community? No, I hope not. I never started a fight, ever. The only times I got into a fight were with, like, some really drunk people that, like, we're trying to separate them. We're just always trying to de-escalate. And sometimes if somebody's getting punched in the face, I would insert myself between these two people and just say, like, I would try not to start a fight. I would always keep my hands up and just be like, just calm down. I'm just going to calm down. A very few times somebody took a swing at me. I punched them. They dropped. Very simple stuff. Not like long, drawn-out, weird fights. Never used a weapon on anybody. Nothing like that. Yeah, I'm Australian. If anyone open carried a rifle here, I'd be gone. Yeah, I know. Hankification. I someday will have to visit Sweden. I think it's beautiful. My grandmother was from Sweden. So I'm 25% Swedish. And so I've always had it in my heart to someday visit, the town she and her family were from. That would mean a lot to me if I could do that someday. So, yeah. And I recently lettered a comic for a Swedish gentleman. That was a lot of fun. And I've got a friend, Pernilla, who's an artist and is from Sweden. The Swedish are wonderful, wonderful people. It's nice to meet another person from your beautiful country. Big, big fan. Folks, if you could have a house or an apartment, just a nice place to live in any other country that you do not currently reside in, where would you magically get this place to live and why? Like, where would you decide to live? For me, I would be very tempted to choose either Tokyo, because I love it there, or potentially New Zealand. I think that's a pretty wonderful country. I don't know the name of the town off the top of my head, Hankification. I'm sorry. I don't remember the name of the town. I'd have to ask my father right now. I should know that. I believe our family name was Sandon. I don't remember the name of the town. I'm trying to. It's not coming to me. I believe it was somewhere on the coast, but that doesn't really limit it. Yeah, so I'll figure that out. It's a good question that I should know, but I don't. Let's see. Cookie Medicine says, write it. We're all weirdos in some way. Write it honestly, and I think you've got something really special there. I mean, I think I do have a unique story. I personally really love stories of sort of niche communities. For instance, writing about the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. That's interesting. Books about people that live as carnies, like carnival folk. That's interesting. So maybe, and then there have been books and plenty of articles about Phoenix Jones and about the superhero or what is it called, real life superhero world. So there have been a bunch of stuff about it. I do think most of it makes, not the stuff about Phoenix, but most of the stuff about sort of the rest of them does make it a little goofy, because there's a lot of big fat weirdos that have done this, or at least just sort of dressed up and said that they're a superhero, but that doesn't necessarily really make you a superhero. I think it might be interesting to tell things from my perspective, because I don't think that there's really been a story like that, or a long-term narrative about what it's like to fall into that world for a while and then, essentially get disillusioned and sort of retire from it, you back out of it. So it might be a little interesting, and it would be punctuated with the occasional, little bit of an action scene, which is kind of unique. I would want it to be honest. It wouldn't be superhero action like you see in Spider-Man or even Batman or anything. It would be much more simple, down to earth. Somebody takes a swing, somebody gets hit. That's it. I am tempted. Here's the thing. I don't necessarily think I would be the best artist for it. I know I'm drawing right now. I love drawing. I don't think my work, I think it would be a little too stiff. I'd really like to find somebody that has a little bit more of an open line work, not open line work, but slightly cartoony style in a sense, but still grounded, not silly, just simplified. I'd want that because I'd really sort of want a character that people could project themselves onto, and that appears kind of vulnerable, not tough and cool, because I don't think this is the kind of story that I'd want to try to glorify and make sound like this is a cool option that you should really consider. So I'd want to sort of find that sort of innocence and vulnerability to this. So I don't necessarily think that my artwork would quite be right for this story. Even though it's my story and I want to write it, I don't necessarily think I should draw it. So that's something that slows me down a little bit. Okay, people are talking about where they would potentially live if they could just magically get a house or an apartment somewhere in a different country than they currently live. So I always find this kind of interesting. McNuggy, currently from Australia, says, maybe Czech Republic. Went there when I was a teenager and it was really gorgeous. Was too young to truly enjoy it. Yeah, I've heard some wonderful things about that area. I've got a couple friends that live in Germany. I've got a friend that lives in Poland, not the Czech Republic, but towards Eastern Europe, and it does look beautiful. It does look beautiful. Israel says, I'd move to Peru. It's where I'm from, and they make great food. Well, that's a fantastic reason. It's your history, it's your culture, and you love the food. Loving the food would be very important to moving somewhere. So maybe as much as I love Tokyo, I don't love seafood. Maybe I wouldn't be able to fully appreciate life there. Maybe I should choose something a little bit more I don't know. I like meat. I like maybe Germany or something, Maybe I could have pretzel and schnitzels and stuff. McNuggy, I think a more grounded take on superheroes would be interesting. Thank you. Sigmund says, I feel like you could really pull it off. You would make great storyboards. Well, I could potentially do that. I could potentially make storyboards for it. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting idea. I'd certainly provide, at the very least, character designs, because I will say this, I wouldn't use the names and likenesses of the real life people that I did this with. I'd create analogs for that. Yes, it's my life story. I can tell the true story, but I think I could create analogs for these people because I don't have any interest in, making a real person look bad potentially. but I'd want to be honest with the story. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see here. Fun to use everybody here as a sounding board. Thank you very much for listening to me and putting up with my ridiculousness. I saw a really good indie movie this weekend that I really recommend, but it's probably horror or at least thriller, so it may not appeal to everybody. Just giving that as a heads up. I thought it was really hardcore and badass. It was called Mohawk, and it's set during like maybe 1814 in upstate New York, where a bunch of overzealous U.S. troops are hunting down some Mohawk Native Americans, as well as a British officer who is teaming up with them. At that point in time, the Mohawk Nation was remaining, what would you call it, like independent. They weren't choosing sides in the battle between America and England. They were just trying to mind their own business, and they used that as a backdrop for this story with some pretty scary American soldiers that go after these people. And it's maybe kind of like a home invasion thriller, but like the whole forest is the home, or at least this part of upstate New York, where they actually filmed it, and they actually used real, like the lead actress is an actual Mohawk Native American, so there's a little bit of an authenticity to it, and yeah, it's pretty brutal, pretty hardcore, but it's a really cool movie. So I saw that this past weekend, and I recommend it. Yeah, I thought it was really well done. Like, it's indie, so it probably didn't have a huge budget, but they used their money well, because everything looked and sounded fantastic. Like a great score. The forest is beautiful. The special effects are like really convincing, and yeah, it's pretty great. Pretty great stuff. All right, let's see. Oh, Cookie Madison says live in New Zealand, but will get on a plane to London tomorrow. I don't. Where in New Zealand? Because I want to go like top to bottom. I want to visit New Zealand. And I also love London, though. I agree with you there. London has a lot to offer in terms of entertainment and history. So I also love London. Would not get bored of that anytime soon. Japan has McDonald's spaghetti, though. Yes, that's right. McDonald's and Subway and all those sort of international, like Kentucky Fried Chicken. They're always interesting to see when I'm in a foreign country, because they have kind of the main menu items, and then they always have a few that are tailored to what the locals like. Royfield says, I've never been a Gene Colan fan. What? Really? I mean, I'm not saying he's in my top 10 favorite artists, but I really like a lot of Gene Colan stuff from the 70s and 80s. Wow. Okay. Have you ever read Tomb of Dracula, Royfield? Because he's good on that. He's really good on that. Cookie Madison says they are from Auckland. Would love to visit it. Would love to. Someday. Norway. is pretty much a better version of Sweden, and Norwegians sound adorable. I just tried a alcohol that was new to me that's from Norway, and I hear that it's popular in Sweden. Is new to me, akavit. So I actually just did an episode of Comic Tropes for my patrons on Patreon. It's an exclusive for them for now, where I drink akavit. What an interesting alcohol. It tastes a little like scotch, I would say, but that's the closest I can come up with. Oh, sorry you didn't like it, Royfield. Hankification says, in terms of like, a foreign country to potentially move to, or have like, a house in a second place. Probably Canada. I can't imagine living in a society that's not a social democracy. Well, I don't blame you. I mean, that's you're spoiled. Yeah. I like to sometimes think that that's the way America's heading. Not right this second, obviously. But I think we're going to start noticing that, like, countries like Sweden and Canada figured out some solutions to problems that we don't have. We'll see. Hard to say. McNuggy says, I feel like my Kiwi friends are always talking about earthquakes, which is pretty scary. I guess I didn't realize that they were prone to big ones. We get tiny earthquakes here on the west coast of America. Although I can't remember the last time I experienced one. What else do I want to do with this? I'm having fun chatting with you guys. Thanks for all the interesting questions and tidbits. You guys are all... This is a good group of people that's really good about sharing. Hankification. Yeah, it's tradition to drink akavit on the big holidays. That's what I heard. Yeah, in my last job, I had a coworker who had a Swedish husband, and they celebrated the big holidays with akavit. I was like, I'm sorry, I know a lot of alcohols. I went to bartending school. I've done some bartending. I'm not familiar with akavit. She told me what it was. I went to the local liquor store, and I had to look. There are some areas that are divided by like foreign countries. And sure enough, that's where I found akavit. And I was like, well, I have to try it. I didn't like or hate it. I was neutral about it. It's not gross. I didn't think it was delicious. I don't know if it comes in different flavors or if you're supposed to mix it with something. I just tried it as itself. And I would say the closest I could compare it to is Scotch, although it maybe had almost an anise or slightly licorice aftertaste to it, but I'm really not sure if that's exactly what I was tasting. McNuggy says, first Cookie Madison says, we get earthquakes further down south, but Auckland's relatively safe. It's the volcanoes that'll get us here. And McNuggy says, volcanoes are much scarier. Oh my God. Well, I also here in this part of Washington State that I live in, we are not far from a volcano, Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier it's called. And yeah, if that exploded, I mean, if that erupted, I would have to beat a hasty retreat south. That's the only direction I could go, because east is the ocean, west is too mountainous to escape quickly, and the it's basically in that direction, the mountain. So I can't go north either because that's definitely passing the mountain. I would have to go south. Hope for the best. But as far as I know, it's not supposed to erupt anytime soon. Hopefully, our scientists know what they're talking about. Do you guys remember, like, a number of years ago, like, a volcano went off in Italy, and some people didn't have enough time to escape, and then the government sued their scientists saying that it was their fault for these deaths. And it's like, oh my God, wait a minute, like, scientists are allowed to make mistakes. You can't go after them. Oh, that was a scary idea. They were just going after their own scientists, saying, like, you should have prevented this. Relax. I was in Seattle when Mount St. Helens went. That was the late 80s or early 90s, I think. Yeah, I think that was the late 80s that happened. I was living on the east coast of our country at that point, so I was nowhere near this. But Chrissy, my fiance, was here when Mount St. Helens erupted. She says she still remembers, like, it was like snow falling in the sky, but it was ash. Sigmig says, beats having yearly flooding in Houston. Yeah, everybody has something, right? Flooding is devastating. Flooding is awful, scary stuff. Tornadoes sort of scare me, just because they seem wildly unpredictable. Like, I feel like I grew up on the East Coast, and we had nor'easters, we called them. Essentially, hurricanes. There was like a small hurricane season in the winter. And bad, real bad, especially the closer to the coast that you live. The houses and people that live by the coast get pounded. They just went through one really bad in my hometown. My sister didn't have power for like 2 full days. But you can still sort of prepare for a hurricane in a way that you can't prepare the same way for a tornado. Tornadoes scare me. I don't think I'd want to live in tornado area. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to give that a pass. You know what? I'll just declare that right now. I'm not a fan of tornadoes. All right, this is getting too serious. Let's talk about alcoholic drinks, says Cookie Madison. And Hankification is talking about Akavit, so Cookie appreciates that, and says, I don't like the stronger stuff. It tastes like gasoline. Okay, the stuff I was drinking was like 41.5% alcohol by volume, so it was pretty strong, actually, but I wouldn't say it was quite gasoline. I've definitely dealt with worse drinks. Sorry to scare you, Cookie. Royfield Brown says, your comic book tropes was great as always. Thank you. I only became a Daredevil fan after John Romita Jr. took over, though I have 2 old Gene Colan comics. Yeah, John Romita Jr., that was when Ann Nocenti, I believe, was writing the title. That was... I really like John Romita Jr.'s artwork from that period of time. I really like that. Definitely a big fan. Yeah, that was actually a pretty cool Daredevil era. That was when Typhoid Mary was introduced. That was an interesting villain. for the time. Because Daredevil's Rogues Gallery for a long period of time was full of real goofballs. Leapfrog and Stiltman and Masked Marauder. It took a long time for him to get any sort of actual threatening villains. Royfield Brown loves Typhoid Mary. Cool. Hankification says, I'm a bit of a wimp. No, I doubt it. Royfield says, you must have been asked this before, but did you like Black Panther? I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really well done. I don't know if it would quite break into, like, you know, my absolute top Marvel films. I think my personal favorites are, like, Captain America Winter Soldier. I've really connected with that one. The first Guardians of the Galaxy is pretty fantastic. What else was a really good one? Spider-Man Homecoming I thought was really, really well done. But actually, now that I think of it, yeah, maybe Black Panther would be in, like, sort of my top 5, because along with maybe, like, the first Iron Man or something. I also really do like the first Avengers. But that's pretty lighthearted. Yeah, anyway, it was good. It was good. Speaking of J.R. Jr., have you seen his recent work on Kick-Ass, asks Jose. No. I read the first 2 Kick-Ass stories, and it didn't really connect with me in a big way, to be honest. The first one was pretty good. The second one I didn't really care for at all, actually. It was too mean-spirited. And, like, the whole idea of, like, it trying to almost be superheroes in the real world, it doesn't really function like that. I don't think it functions as, like, a proper deconstruction of, like, superheroes in the real world. In other words, non-powered people being superheroes. Because, like, it's undercut. That's Mark Millar, right? I'm going to say it is. Mark Millar undercuts it with Hit Girl, who's, like, this perfect ninja. Like, 12-year-olds or not. 12-year-old or not. She's just, like, too perfect and amazing. It doesn't feel realistic. I don't know. Cookie Madison says, it's true, for such a great character, they gave Daredevil some lame villains. I don't think Stan Lee took Daredevil as seriously as some others. He was very much sort of like, you know, Spider-Man, but his disability was like what separated him from anyone else. And it really wasn't until, like, they started doing some more gritty crime stories with Daredevil, like a little closer maybe what you'd see in a Batman, and like playing up his Catholic upbringing, that you started to go like, oh, okay, here's how you make Daredevil a little more unique. And I think that one thing that hasn't been explored too much, although I hear that it's currently being explored a bit more, is that he's a lawyer, and I'd love to actually see him be a hero in the courtroom. You know, like, try some cases. I think that you could get some really effective drama building up courtroom cases and having Daredevil investigate and gather information for a trial. I think that could be, like, I think it's done on a superficial level, but, you know, like, having the actual courtroom be the place where the actual big stuff happens. I would like to see that, but you'd probably need a writer with a pretty strong legal background to make that plausible and believable. So that's probably the trick that holds Daredevil back from really going there, but I think that that's still an area that's been underexplored as far as, you know, who Daredevil is established as being. I think that, like, you could really do some interesting stuff with him in the courtroom and play up the fact that he is a lawyer. Because if he wasn't accomplishing anything big as a lawyer, You know, wouldn't he almost feel like just being Daredevil all the time and just be a law clerk to pay the bills? So he must be accomplishing, you know, at least as much as Matt Murdock as he feels he does as Daredevil. I think that's an important aspect to keep in mind. Like that's and also that's what makes Daredevil one of the few superheroes that I sort of consider a grown up. I think that like some of the superheroes, they just sort of work in something that, you know, gets them closer to being somewhere where they'd hear about crimes. You know, they work at a newspaper. That's fine. You know, they're a cop. That's cool. These are legit jobs. Every job is legit. But I really feel that the responsibilities of being a lawyer for Daredevil, or running a company like Tony Stark, or being a king like Black Panther, there's not a lot of room for being too immature. You can crack jokes as a superhero, that's fine, but those are very adult, very heavy responsibility jobs. Jobs where it's not necessarily like instantaneous life and death, sometimes, but they're jobs where you're really managing a lot of other people's lives. A lawyer, you know, president of a big company, king of a nation. Those are such massive responsibilities. They're really adult characters. I really want Strix to return, but I don't think that will happen after DC backstabbed Gail Simone. That's from Hankification. Simone's Batgirl is like the third best New 52 title. I hate how they soft rebooted it. I'm not familiar with how DC backstabbed Gail Simone. Sounds like I've got some reading to do. Gail Simone is someone that I'm not as familiar with her work as the next guy. Someday I'll have to do a fair amount of research on Gail Simone so that I can, you know, potentially do an episode about her or something, because she's definitely a name creator, and I'm sure that people would be interested to, you know, really dig into her stylistic quirks, her tropes, you might say. But I'd have to do some research there to get more familiar. I mean, I've read some of her stuff, but I'm not like, I haven't read tons of stuff, I don't think. I'd have to look back at what she's written and see what I've read. Is it bad that I avoid superhero comics? Asks Sigamigs. Not at all. Not at all. There's so many different types of stories you can tell in comics. Like, why limit yourself to just one genre? If that doesn't speak to you, but you like comics, fortunately, there's tons of other types of stories that can be told in comic books. That's what I love about them. I think it's such a versatile medium. You can tell crime stories, you can tell nonfiction like historical comics, you can tell romance, you can tell westerns, you can tell sci-fi, fantasy. Like, there's so many ways you can go with comics. Like, no, you don't have to be into superheroes to call yourself a fan of comics. Not at all. Let's see. McNuggy, are you planning to do more episodes on female writer artists for March? I was I was thinking that Lily Renee would be the only one, and I had a plan for what I was going to review this week, and at the last minute, and this rarely happens for me, it's changed. I came across a different comic that I will be reviewing that's by female creators. That is my current plan this week. I'm in a heavy sort of research mode. So the answer is no. I will be doing at least one more about female creators in March. That was not my original plan. I thought one was all I really knew about that I wanted to cover, but no. I will, be investigating or analyzing, reviewing, whatever you want to call it, a second group of female creators this week. Okay, Cookie Madison says, talking about having important jobs reminds me of all those Bronze Age comics where all the heroes sat around in their costumes shooting the breeze. Yeah, stuff like Defenders, where they're just, we just exist as superheroes. It's like Thor is always Thor. You know what, let me switch this. Give me 1 second. I know there was a few other things that were typed that I didn't see yet. I know it slows down my drawing to answer everything in the chat room, but there's some really interesting stuff that gets asked, and I want to see it all. I'm going to look in just a sec. Look very Mike Mignola-esque. Are you talking about my piece? If that's so, that's quite a compliment. I don't know. But then again, Mignola is basically my favorite, I think. Certainly way up there. I love Mike Mignola's art. It really catches my imagination. But maybe you're talking about something else. I'm shy to accept that compliment if it's aimed at me. I'm shy. Let's see. There's the Dodsons. Jack Pride. Oh, are you talking about like female creators? Is that what you're talking about? I missed something. Hankification says, check out her Batgirl. We're talking about Gail Simone there. If you haven't. The art is a bit suspect at times, but overall I like it a lot. It was one of the first runs I read when I got into comics. Okay, I'll keep that in the back of my mind. He might create the next Hellboy or The Walking Dead. Nice shading. I don't know if that's fair. You know what I'm going to do for this, actually? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to finish inking this arm, and I'm going to color it with Copics. That wasn't my original plan, but I'm in the mood to do something a little different. This is just sort of I got to remind myself that this is just a sketch for a friend, and he doesn't expect anything in particular. So, this is the perfect opportunity for me to experiment in some areas. So I've got this huge bag of Copic markers here. I've done very little with them, and I want to do more. So that's what's about to happen, which means I won't have to do the shading in just blacks that I was thinking I was going to have to do. Let's see. Israel says, I've been studying lots of Greg Capullo's art. What's your opinion? I like Greg Capullo's art. I'm not a huge fan, but I do think that he's very, very talented. I think he has all the fundamentals. I think he's both a good illustrator and a good storyteller. you know, it's purely just like personal preference and taste that you know, he's not necessarily my favorite. I kind of liked his earlier work a little more than what it evolved into during his time on Spawn. I liked his work on Quasar back in the day, although I will also say I haven't looked at that in a long time. You know, I looked at it back then, and I really, really liked how he was drawing things back then. So, you know, maybe I'd look now and I'd have a slightly different opinion. Time changes. Maybe he got significantly better. I don't know. But I remember really liking how he illustrated things on Quasar, and then, like, you know, that kind of changed as he sort of adjusted his work to fit more Todd McFarlane's sensibilities. Yeah. Very talented gentleman. Not my personal favorite, but very, very talented. I can distinguish between those two things, you know. I can also say that there are people that I like that aren't as talented. You know, like when I was a kid, I really loved Rob Liefeld. And these days I would not say that, but as a kid I loved it. And that's totally valid, I think, you know, for somebody to love that. I gotta erase some of these pencil bits underneath if I'm going to color it with the Copics and hope for a halfway decent result. Let's see. Cookie Medicine. Been great chatting, but gotta go. Catch y'all next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. I hope you have no volcanoes. No volcanoes. I feel like I'm on a game show. No whammies, no whammies. No volcanoes, no volcanoes. All right. I just watched your episode on him. I don't think I've done an episode on Greg Capullo. No, I haven't. So maybe you're talking about Todd McFarlane. Or you're talking about something else that I'm not following. A cool female artist to dive into would be Jan Duursema, if you haven't already. Definitely, I think that Jan did a bunch of stuff in heavy metal back in the day. Am I remembering correctly? I feel like that's what I'm remembering. Oh, the Rob episode, excuse me. Yes. Rob Liefeld, yes. You just watched that one. Thank you. How can someone who is so artistically talented like something as unimaginative as Friday the 13th? I don't know. Who's the person that's artistically talented that loves Friday the 13th? I know I personally love Friday the 13th. I don't consider it good. I consider it entertaining, though. It's garbage, but it's entertaining garbage. Has an art style ever put you off reading a new comic, says Sigmund? Oh, me? I'm not that talented at drawing, but thank you. That's kind of you. I don't know what to say. I love all kinds of movies. I love horror. I can just turn my mind off and just veg out to a dumb movie. That's all I can say. Sigmund says, has an art style ever put you off of reading a new comic? I feel like art style appeal dictates my purchases too much. Yeah, I think that there's definitely been times where I've decided not to buy a comic because the art just didn't appeal to me, or I bought it and then gone like, doesn't appeal to me. I can't think of a specific artist right now. All I can say is, yeah, I've definitely picked up a comic, thought that the premise or the cover was intriguing, and then said, not for me. In fact, now that I think of it, I can think of 2 or 3, but I really don't want to badmouth anything. You know what I mean? And also it's like a little more on the indie side. Okay, Jose says that I'm correct. Jan Duursema did do a lot of heavy metal and also a bunch of Star Wars. Yeah, I'm remembering that stuff now. That's an interesting idea. Maybe I will take a look at Gianter Sima's artwork for an episode at some point. What do you think about Frank Miller's art? I think that Frank Miller's art in the 80s was really interesting, good stuff. And I think in the 90s he tried some very interesting things that led to some pretty good issues of stuff like Sin City. I think it then started to sort of devolve. I do not love like stuff like the Dark, what was it, Dark Knight Rises again? Am I remembering that right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't care for his artwork these days anymore. It's too bloopy. It's too exaggerated in like an ugly manner. It doesn't appeal to me at all. Yeah, just not for me anymore. I'm sure he has his fans. He'll do fine without me. Do you think the world is ready for an Animal Man movie? And who would you cast as Buddy? I spend way too much time thinking about a non-existing Animal Man movie. I think Animal Man is absolutely a really good idea for DC to consider because he's different. He's a family man, and he's not necessarily the most powerful or competent superhero. So that's something very different to explore. To explore his feelings of obligation to be a father and a provider, as well as a superhero. Like, I think that would be very interesting to explore as a movie. Do I think it's likely to happen anytime soon? Probably not. He's still not got a lot of name recognition, but I think if DC ever had the success that Marvel did, if Marvel can put out like Ant-Man, Doctor Strange movies and stuff like that, then I think that like DC could theoretically get to a place where there's someday a movie about Buddy Baker, Animal Man. I don't know who to cast as him. I would say somebody that's almost like a little sort of dorky or nerdy, maybe like a comedian or something that could still get himself in good shape. But off the top of my head, I guess I don't. I'm not sure off the top of my head, sorry. Rides Again. Thank you, Hankification. Yeah, I'm thinking of Dark Knight Rides Again, I guess. Okay. Ugh. Copics are so fun to color with, folks. I don't know what to say. Maybe it's just that, it's relatively new to me to play with these things, but they're just so rich, and you can like blend them together by like, using different colors. They blend with each other really well. They do bleed a little, so you have to be very careful about like like coming up against certain line art. You don't want to accidentally either smudge or have the line art go too far, but they're really fun to play with. And they come in so many shades that you can like, depending on what you can afford, because they are expensive, you can like really layer things and blend in a great way to go from light to dark. I've got a fair amount of grays, so when it comes to sort of doing the suit, I'll be able to do some interesting stuff tonight. Let's see. what do I have that would work well? I'm going to back out actually of this. It's zoomed in more than I need to be because I'm not doing fine detail anymore. Maybe one more. It's getting a little quiet, but it's pretty late, so I don't blame anybody for that. I'm trying to find the right tones for things. And I've got a lot of, these aren't even all of them, like I've got a lot of Copics to choose from. So I gotta think this through. Where's a good orange? I want a pretty yellowy orange, so maybe that. Let's see. When did you first start drawing? Oh boy, I don't really remember Henkification. I've been drawing as long as I can remember. You know, a lot of what I know is on the self-taught side. So I can't even remember a time when I wasn't drawing, but I definitely didn't take it as seriously as I do these days until I was about like 20 or so, to be honest. I'd always drawn. I'd received even compliments for it and stuff, but I didn't take it very seriously until I was at least 20. And I wish I had gotten an earlier start on trying to be a better artist. But I don't think that was ever really presented too much to me as like a realistic idea. So, hindsight, right? How about anybody else here? Who started drawing younger than I did? Like I said, 20. Who started drawing earlier than that, and you know, trying to be better and improve, and or at least, you know, just remembers always trying to draw and get better. I'm sure somebody out there, maybe all of you, started younger than me. But I can definitely remember, like, you know, drawing comics and comic strips and characters, like, you know, by 5 or 6. Jose says, any tropes that were once prominent in comics that you wish could make a return today? Maybe like crazy glow-in-the-dark covers, like the one from Tom Mandrake's Spectre. Yeah, I think that more condensed storytelling would sometimes be nice. You know, just be able to like pick up a single issue of a comic and get pretty close to a full story instead of things being so spread out. I think that would be welcome. Not always, but sometimes change of pace. I feel like everything's gotten a little too decompressed. I think that could be you know, nice. What else would be nice? I think that sometimes that the art in the later 70s through the mid 80s was a little more experimental in terms of people playing with shadows and stuff, and that now line art tends to be a lot more open. I would like to see maybe like a little bit of a return to that. And just a little less emphasis on event comics and superheroes. I think that there's way too much emphasis on creating an event. That burns me out. Okay, McNuggy says, started seriously drawing around 11 or 12. Israel says, I'm 22 and just finished my first sketchbook. McNuggy started drawing because of Neopets. I mean, yeah, my first drawings were of things like Pac-Man and Smurfs and Garfield. Like, I was just drawing what I thought was cool when I was really young. Did I read Lee Week's Batman Annual? No, I don't think I did. I like Lee Week's art generally, but I don't think I read that Batman Annual. Maybe I did and I've forgotten it. Jose asked that. Jose also says, I remember my best friend in 4th grade drew Sonic the Hedgehog fighting Spider-Man, and it blew my mind. Been drawing nonstop since. Good. I love it. Hankification. You're really good. Keep it up. I started drawing like 3 weeks ago after being inspired by some Jim Lee streams I stumbled upon. I'm terrible, but happy with how quickly I'm making progress. Hard work. You'll make your own improvements even without looking at any other advice if you just keep drawing. You're going to start seeing where you want to focus your attention on, like maybe getting the shape of a face or proportions or the hand gesture. You're going to start doing a lot of that like on your own as long as you just keep drawing. I promise you. I promise that's the case. Yeah, see, I don't know if this can't quite. I'm going to try to bring this. There's the tiniest bit of red bleed over this thumb, this finger. Don't know if I can quite. Yeah, I can't quite get the focus to show it, but that's sort of one of the parts of Copics is they will sort of bleed on you. You have to battle them there. But I think my friend will be okay with a little bit of that because these Copics kind of make this piece pop a little bit. So that's fun. Let's see what I got. See, and now this is the fun part. So like this is E000. This is E02. Let's see if I can find one in the middle. Not sure. That's R. But basically, you can go like one level up if you look carefully at like the colors that you have. Okay, so I don't have the. Oh wait, maybe one of these. No. Okay. So I'm going like up 2 levels from what I drew this skin tone with, and now I'm going to see what that looks like. Yeah, see. Okay, that's a little darker than I wanted it to be, but I'm just gonna deal. I'm gonna shade some of this a little. Ooh. Whoa! Oh, this is the weird thing where it can bleed sometimes, so you need to. I like drawing unclothed women. What about you? That's from Prajwal Jayaraj. I mean, I don't know if you're being funny or if you're being serious. I've taken all sorts of life drawing classes where I draw men and women in the nude, and I actually do feel like I get quite a bit out of it. So I actually do enjoy drawing, models in the nude. I also like doing what's it called? Dr. Sketchies. That's a franchise where models will come from the world of like burlesque, and they'll like do a bunch of poses in minimal clothing, but still clothed, and that can be very educational as well, because you're getting most of the form, but you're having to draw some drapery, things like that. So yeah, I actually do enjoy drawing in the nude when it's available. So I think you almost can't see how light this gray is, but this is the lightest gray you can draw in, and then I'm going to go up slowly from there. That was like a W0. Next I'm going to go to a W2 for most of this mask on this side. All right, what else was asked? Hankification, thanks. McNuggy rolls eyes. Israel says, I like Frank Frazetta Conan. Frank Frazetta is fantastic, and I had the good fortune to visit his museum. He's got his own museum on his, well, he's deceased now, but he did have a museum on his own property. Now, when I visited, he was already pretty old and ailing. He wasn't in his best shape, so he was not there to greet visitors. He had been in his better days. But his wife was there, and I got to speak with his wife about Frank's career and technique and observe a lot of gorgeous original like paintings and illustrations at Frank Frazetta's gallery, and it was a wonderful experience. It was really, really nice. I value that a lot. So Frank Frazetta is fantastic. You're gonna learn a lot from him. He's great. See, I'm just going up a level on the grays each time. This is a W3, and can kind of help with indicating light and shadow, as long as I'm careful with how I apply it. Do you like Dave McKean's artwork? Yeah, I respect it. I don't personally love it. It's not my favorite, but yeah, I respect it. I'll read a story with it. I wouldn't put it down. Do I love it? No. If I'm being honest, I don't love Dave McKean's artwork. But you know, he's got talent. No question. Probably also haven't, now that I'm thinking of it, been exposed to that much of it. I'm only thinking of some of the stuff he did with Neil Gaiman on Sandman. I'm trying to think of any other Dave McKean I might have come across, and off the top of my head, I can't think of any. But I've probably read some other stuff by him, but I can't think of it right now. Would you ever consider doing an episode on him or maybe Mobius? I have done an episode on Mobius. I hope you'll take a look. I loved doing the episode on Mobius. Would I do an episode about Frank Frazetta? Absolutely. I'm sure I will at some point. I don't know when. Probably not anytime too soon. But yeah, I would really enjoy doing that. That would be really cool. I'm definitely a fan. And I think he did a lot of great stuff in, well, all sorts of areas. Great painter, great book cover illustrator, did some comics, pulp magazines. Definitely a really amazing talent. Yeah. No, that's not right. I need even darker. Okay. Gonna go up another level. Hankification. What do you think of the art in All-Star Batman Rebirth? All-Star Batman Rebirth? I don't know. I think the only Rebirth title I've read is just plain Batman, written by Tom King. Is that the same book, or is there a second? I mean, I know there's Batman Detective Comics. Is there also an all-star Batman on top of that? If so, I guess I'm not familiar. See, now we're getting somewhere with this. Now we're getting somewhere. Let me back down one level to the W3 and do something. Yeah, All-Star is Scott Snyder and John Romita Jr. Oh, I haven't read that one. The only Batman. I'm not reading a lot of comics. Like weekly. I read like what's well reviewed and or has otherwise made the news somehow or gotten a recommendation from someone or other. So I'm not familiar with that title yet. I'm sorry. At some point maybe I will be. Let's see. Can we? Yeah. All I can say is in person there's a little more sort of like, depth with these Copics. Let's see. Prajwal says, I like Tom King's Batman. He humanized Batman. I really like it too. I am impressed with it thus far. Quite good. I'm looking among my colors right now for a really light orange. I am not finding it, so I'm thinking I'm going to make a change by making this darker. Let's see what that looks like. Yes, actually this is definitely going to work. So I am going to make this darker. I'm just going to establish that for myself, and then I'm going to use this on this side where it's getting a little bit more direct light. Wonderful. I could legit just have fun drawing this whole thing in shades of grays. But I want it to pop a little for my friend, so I'm going to use color, but I really like, and I've only been doing this a very short time, but I like just playing with the different grays with Copics and layering that. Okay, good. So now I've done that, now I need to darken up this side. Hankification, talking about John Romita Jr.'s art. I found the art really interesting because J.R. Jr. has this late 80s style, but the coloring is more modern. Yeah, I bet that would be an interesting contrast. Last thing of Romita Jr.'s that I read probably would have been like Kick-Ass 2, maybe? I don't know if I've read anything more modern than that. But I am a fan of his. I do think that he produces better work the more time he has for a project. Yeah, there was definitely like an era of Spider-Man where that was the only thing he was doing, and I really thought a lot of it was great. And then he, I think, started doing Thor at the same time, and I think that people started looking just a little more cartoony. But maybe not everybody agrees with that assessment. That's fair. That's just what I get out of it. And I haven't really been keeping up with much in DC since the New 52. The New 52 kind of turned me off for a while of reading that stuff. But I have started reading some more with Rebirth. I'd heard good things about Tom King, so I've been reading some of his stuff. Let's see, is this? Yeah, that's gonna work. That's gonna work. This is gonna work. It's tough, you know. I mean, I want to read a lot more modern comics, but the fact is, I can't really afford to right now. So I have to be a lot more picky and choosy, and sort of catch up on things that have been getting a fair amount of acclaim in trade paperbacks, or read it digitally, like when there's deals, you know, sales and stuff. So I wish I could read more modern comics, but I can't. Maybe if my channel for any reason ever took off, then I'd have a little bit more money. Or maybe my next job will pay more and I can get more comics. We'll see. Maybe someday. Okay, what else is being discussed? Still think my fave newish Batman was The Dark Knight Metal, Murder Machine, and The Lost Ones. That's from Israel Lezo. Okay, haven't read those, but appreciate the recommendation. Let's all keep that in mind. There were a few more things in the chat. I'm going to read them. Just a sec. Okay. Tom King's recent Mr. Miracle with Mitch Gerads is phenomenal stuff. That's from Jose. Totally agree. That's one of the few things that I am picking up. And I also really, really, really want to pick up Sean Gordon Murphy's White Knight Batman series, but I haven't read it yet. But I am a massive fan of his work, and I intend at some point to either get the back issues or get it as a trade. Something. I gotta read that. Big fan of his artwork. I think he's phenomenal. Definitely pick up White Knight, says Jose. I will, when I can afford to. I don't have a lot of money. Folks, I am basically eating 1, maybe 2 meals a day because I cannot afford 3. I know and I've never been like this before, but a couple months ago I was laid off, and I am just trying to be frugal with the money that I have. This is a new lifestyle for me. I'm used to having plenty of money, and right now I do not have that. Colorless blender, that's a really cool one. There's a blender here. It does not have a color itself. It's just good for, like, you know, here. I don't know how much it'll show, but I can just sort of go over these two colors together and it blends it a little more. Anyway, it's very subtle, but fun tool to have. If you can afford Copics. I did not buy these Copics. These were given to me. So Copics are a little expensive. This is, yeah, this was a donation. Don't worry about me, like, hankification. Thank you very much for saying that, but, like, I'll find my next job, and then I'll be in really good shape. Yeah. It does bad stuff to your body, I'll tell you. Not eating regularly, like, my body is getting very doughy, and I do not like that at all, but that is a fact. Like, your metabolism will treat you so much better if you go ahead and feed it. Also, I get headaches a lot. I've got a pounding one right now. But you just sort of know that you're going to have it, and you just deal with it, right? Everybody's got their tough times. Nobody needs to hear me whining about mine. Here's something I do feel bad about. I see homelessness a bunch up here in the Pacific Northwest, and I want to do more to help, and I don't really have the ability to right now. So that makes me feel kind of like a jerk. Oh well. We all have our times that are tough, I guess. I guess. I just feel like such a jerk when I walk past someone with a sign asking for money, and I'm just like, I don't have anything right now, sorry. Boy, does that make me feel like a greedy jerk. Okay, let's see. If you're inclined to, readcomicsonline.to has many up-to-date comics. Not sure if I can paste links on here. I'm pretty sure that links get blocked, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. I'm aware of that site. I don't feel good about that because I've got so many friends that are professionals in the comic book world, and I don't want to like sort of be one of these guys that's sort of taking their creative results without reimbursing them something that's fair. So, you know, to each their own on using sites like that. It wasn't even something that was available to me growing up, so it's a very new sort of idea that, you know, you can have websites that will like show you almost like any comic ever. It's kind of cool in a way that there's an archive of this stuff. It'll probably outlive us all. What do you think? Do you think that we as humanity will like create artificial intelligence and that will outlive us because we've not really taking care of the planet well enough for ourselves? I wonder. What was your last job? Marketing. Honestly, like the last one tended to deal with more just project management than I prefer to deal with. I like really using my skills in marketing for like, you know, well, my favorite stuff is graphic design, but I've kind of moved, unfortunately, like I've got so much experience at this point that I really have to manage more big projects. You know, coming up with a social media strategy, figuring out channels of distribution, figuring out the best brand for a company to use, like what resonates with their target market, things like that, like figuring out like the best way to promote things for a company, like where do people get the information that they like, and you know, how do you put that information in front of them. It's not the most exciting, I suppose, but that's my training. That's my degree. I went to college and got my degree by majoring in marketing, and yeah, so that's what I know. And so hopefully I'll get to do that again sometime soon, because I could really use a new job. And I'm just spending huge chunks of my day just applying to places, and when I'm lucky getting to interview, and for whatever reason so far in the last couple months, nothing has clicked, nothing has been the right match. So hopefully as soon as I get back from this trip to Japan, I can fall right into my next role. That would be very nice. That would make me happy. We shall see. We shall see. I don't know what color to use here. Let's see. 2, 3, 4. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. Oh, I'm a marketing guy through and through. I'll market to him and I'll market to you. I can sell you whatever I want. Oh, marketing. Yeah, I just made that up. That's why I'm a genius marketer, because I can just come up with brilliant ideas like that on the spot. I don't know what that was. I'm just getting tired. I'm just being silly, folks. Wow, Japan, sweet. Yes, yes. Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that. Hankification, McNuggy, all these nice people saying good things. Don't know if I missed it, but what was your superhero name? Omega? Yep, it was. Good guess. It was. And, yeah, I'm excited for this trip. My fiance is a painter, talented one. She had a show that started almost 2 years ago to this day at a gallery in Hong Kong. And that show has been over for a while, and the paintings that didn't sell have been held by a friend of hers that lives there. But it's time to pick them up, because the show's over now. And to ship them back was going to be pretty expensive, unfortunately. That's just the nature of sending paintings. Costs quite a bit. And for the same amount it would cost to ship it, we could, well, if we doubled that, then both of us, it would be enough to have both flight and hotel to Japan and Hong Kong for a trip. And so we said, yeah, let's do it. Started planning this right before I got laid off. Decided we would continue anyway and just find a way to make ends meet. It's a little stressful, of course, to me now, but I'm just going to, since I'm doing it, I'm going to try to enjoy it while I'm there, and then just hit the ground running as soon as I get home. We shall see. That's W4. Just W6. Nope. That sounds rough. I'm a mess, so I'm still in school, says Hankification. Well, that's not a mess. That's, yeah, school's good. wish you luck with school. What are you studying? Hankification? I'm curious. What are you studying? Aren't these great? Doesn't this already sort of just have... I mean, I'm not a great colorist, I don't think, but I feel like this already achieves a certain amount of depth just by benefit of working with these Copics. They blend in a really easy manner. I don't know. I like them. I like them. Oh, so Hankification says he heard my cat. Yeah. What time is it? It's midnight here. He should be asleep. He wants attention. I love my silly little cat, though. When I go to Japan, one thing I'd really like to do is stop at a cat cafe. That's a thing that they have there. They're basically, like tea or coffee shops that you go in and they've got kittens and exotic cats and stuff at different places. Different ones have different themes, and you can just sort of sit with the kitties. And I don't have allergies. I like kitties, so that's something I think I'd like to do when I'm there. We'll see. But I think that would be fun. This is 6. I'm going to drop down to 3 for some highlights. Hankification is studying computer science, but I'm taking a year extra to get a computer engineering degree. That's fantastic. That's a good continued success with that. I really hope that works. Nice, solid career choice. That's great. I hope school goes well for you. And what else? If you really want to get them fat YouTube checks, just vlog your trip. Well, I probably will record a bunch of it and release it, as sort of a bonus to, my channel. I don't know that anybody will be particularly excited about seeing me describe Japan, since I'm not a hot young lady. But who knows? Who knows, right? Let's see. Just don't film a dead guy. No, I wouldn't. Too much respect for both human beings and for nature. Yeah, that's not something I would think to do. Would not naturally occur to me. What a world we live in, where that's the kind of thing that millions of people will take a look at. To be fair, there's probably a very respectful way to actually cover the topic of suicide and just warn people, like, yeah, we are going to show people, they're going to, but their identities will be hidden, but that's what this is about. That's all this is about, and we're going to be serious and respectful about it. So I'm not saying the topic itself should be barred. In fact, I saw an interesting documentary called The Bridge, all about people that jump off of San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. And it's pretty serious stuff, It's pretty hard to listen to sometimes, to watch, but it's real life, and there's stuff we can learn from it. So. What do I have here? A 6. Wish I had grabbed something a little lighter, but that's okay. I'm almost done here with what I'm going to do for my pal. Again, this is for a pal of mine, Randy Stone. It was his birthday. He didn't want to make a big deal of it, but I was like, look, you're my buddy. Let me draw you something. And he asked for this. And he created a comic a number of years ago. He's actually in the process of creating one right now. He's paying a great artist, but I forget the artist's name, but he's paying a great artist to illustrate it for him. And he's actually teaming up with a writer who's done a bunch of stuff at like Marvel and Dark Horse to help him with the writing. He wants it to be as good as absolutely possible. And anyway, but his old comic that he did a few years ago, he did one issue of something called Champion by Randy Stone, well, as the writer. I forget the artist. Sorry, I didn't do it. Just a really nice and talented guy. He's got some good big ideas of stuff that you can do with superheroes that you can't really do at like Marvel or DC or something. Creative fellow, really nice guy. But he's Canadian, so of course he's nice, right? This is what I'm looking for. Oh, no, it isn't. I almost used the wrong color. Oh, disaster. Oh, he would have just thrown it at me. Hello, Charm Lucky. Thank you for joining. Let's see. Israel says, Kay, it's 3 a.m. here. Oh, my God, you're on the East Coast. I'm getting off, and good luck with your job search and the trip. Thank you, Israel. Thank you so much for joining today. McNuggy says, I heard the majority of survivors who jumped off the bridge say they immediately regretted as they were falling. Yes, that's what I heard as well, which is quite upsetting to hear that, like, someone had, I mean, to make that choice must be, oh, so hard. And then to regret it before you die, oh my God, I feel for those people. I just don't want anyone to suffer like that. I suffer from depression. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's so miserable sometimes. All right, enough about that, right? There we go. Lapis Lazuli, this one's called. This is a nice deep blue. A nice deep blue. Oh, great. And of course I bled. That's probably just due to me getting tired. Oh, you know what? I know how I can fix that up a little. Who are you drawing, says Charm Lucky. I am technically drawing myself. A number of years ago, I, perhaps ill-advisedly, who can say, used to patrol the streets of Seattle at night with a fellow named Phoenix Jones as a real-life superhero. Yeah, it was a goofy time. My friend Randy is very amused by that and asked me to illustrate that guy that I was. It was his birthday. I said, really? Okay. If that's what you actually want. And he said, it really is. And so that's what I'm working on. Pretty silly. Let's see. Anything else? No. It's getting late. There's only 9 folks on here. Well, there were only something like 6 to start with. I'm drawing pretty late, but I'm going to draw tomorrow afternoon. I think I've got I think I'm going to draw a little G.I. Joe thing for. Well, I've got 2 separate G.I. Joe things. One that I'm going to do for myself for an animation project, and one that I'm doing for a friend. And I'm not sure yet which one I'm going to draw tomorrow, but tomorrow afternoon I'm going to sit down and do some more live streaming, I think. It keeps me busy, you know? Almost done with what I'm going to do here. It's been a pleasure tonight talking to everybody, answering questions, and just having a really fun and engaging discussion about all sorts of stuff. I hope at some point that I can find a regular time to do these, at least for the most part. Right now, I don't have a regular schedule, so it's very hard to say I'm going to do this every day at a certain time. But I do enjoy doing these. I can't tell whether my art's getting any better or not right now. 'Cause that's kind of, you know, the goal. Trying to draw as often as possible. You want to get better. I don't know. I think I've still got a lot of fundamental problems. We'll get there. Got problems with hands. Got problems with perspective. Got problems with keeping everything looking energetic, like it's got some motion to it. That's a big challenge for any artist, I think. Let's see, what else? It's 9 a.m. here, Henkification in Sweden. Oh, you've been up pretty early then, because I've been doing this for a while. I was going to take a sleeping pill before going to bed, but I accidentally took my ADD medication instead. It's like Adderall, but lasts for 8 hours. Suffice to say, I didn't sleep a whole lot. I'm also very smart. Yeah, I bet you're making all sorts of connections the rest of us can't. I'll try to catch up by drinking a little bit of this Mountain Dew. Charm Lucky just woke up. Good morning. Top of the morning. You've got a little clover in your icon. Top of the morning to you. Diego says you remind me of Bob Ross. Is it the hair? Is it the hair? It's got to be the hair. I'm just going to do a little poof over here. And we're going to make happy trees in the background. Happy trees. Do I have an Instagram? I do. In fact, the best way to find it is by looking above my head. Right there. Chris Piers. That's me on Twitter and Instagram. So, what else? Do you have an Instagram? Just take a page out of Liefeld's book and hide the hands behind stuff. Yeah. Jose says, found ya. Just gave you a follow. Feel free to follow my art journey. 1 more year at the Kubert School. Can't wait. Congratulations again on getting into the Kubert School and apparently being so close to graduation. That's great. So, here's a little sketch I did for my buddy. I think I'm done. You know what I'm going to do is... I'm looking for like a Sharpie to essentially sign it to him. don't think I have a Sharpie, but underneath all of these Copics, I have a pencil. Happy birthday, Randy. All right, folks, it has been my honor and privilege to chat with you tonight. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for being with me on my journey of sketching out and inking and coloring this version of myself in more foolhardy days. I had fun. I hope Randy likes it. I'm sure he will. It's fun, and it's been a real pleasure talking to all of you tonight. Please check out my latest comic Tropes. I put it out this Sunday. It's about a lady who survived World War II, lived as a teenager on her own, like after growing up very privileged, and became a comic book illustrator in the golden age of comics. Did very, very well for herself. Was never trained to be a comic book artist, just sort of fell into it, and she was good at it. So it's an interesting story. Take a look. Yeah, got some good stuff coming up because I'm going to do episodes in Japan and Hong Kong. So that'll be a little over a month out when those are done, sort of being filmed and edited. But got plenty of stuff coming every single week. I've planned out extra episodes that are in the can that will be released while I'm on my trip. So plenty of new content coming. You are all wonderful people. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks. Bye.